Good evening, Monica.
Hi, David. I'm very excited to do this session with you. Quick introduction about myself. I am working as a senior product manager at Salesforce right now, and been in industry for more than a decade. Right, had a longer stint with product manager than my previous engineering background. Right, so very early in the phase, I realized that engineering is really not my cup of tea. But at the same time, I loved the technical aspect of engineering roles. So I was exploring some roles which are very close to technical, at the same time gives me flexibility of doing the business side of stuff, and PM just fits right there. So being there, I started transitioning into PM while I was at Adobe, and then worked in B2B environment with Dell, then B2B2C kind of environment with VMware, and now working on some enterprise solutions at Salesforce. So it's been a fantastic journey. Looking forward to hear from you.
Really rich experience, which we are talking about a decade of product management experience. And to be frank, from 2014 around, I think product management took off when companies like Flipkart in India, they introduced what product management was. And I think you have a rich experience, not just in terms of types of products, but also in types of companies. I think Adobe, let's say, works very differently from VMware, and then Salesforce works again very differently. All of them are
Yeah.
leaders in their own fields. So, to begin with, Monica, tell us something about product management as a role, how you see it. I know there is no exact definition for it, but how you see it, and what are the future prospects of this role? How is it shifting? And in the last decade, maybe you can throw some light on that.
So I think I'll start with a very cliche thing, right? That product managers are mini CEO. While in terms of responsibility, we are definitely mini CEO. You have to work as much as a CEO of a small product would have to work. But in terms of as a person and the kind of decisions you can make, I feel that we are more like an orchestrator, right? So while orchestrator is dealing with violins and guitars, we are dealing with engineers, designers, and marketeers, right? So they are at our disposal and we are making decisions for them, trying to guide them to get into a right pathway, making sure that business priorities are aligned, right?
Right.
So for me, product manager is actually doing everything for a product so that it can meet its business outcomes. It can align with the business strategy.
Coming to your journey, when you started, can you please throw some light? Currently, you are a senior product manager. You must have started somewhere more technical in nature, and then you did your MBA and all. So can you please just share it?
So I transitioned into product role from engineering, right? So I was working as a software engineer at Adobe, and that's when I started to realize that my alignment was more towards business. I want to grow in that side, and I started understanding how the product role is. And I was actually one of the fortunate people back in 2013 that I was able to work closely with product managers. So Adobe had functional product managers at that point in time, and I understand from them that what they are doing, right? How they are processing, how they're meeting with customers, how they're understanding requirements, what are the things that they are doing their day-to-day life. I was able to very closely understand and make a very judicial call that I really love that role. I'm very passionate about what they're doing. And that's when I started to show my interest towards that role. And we thought that, yeah, this is the way I want to be in. So I started with very technical aspect of it. I started being PO first, where I was writing user stories. Business side is being handled by someone else, right? They were translating those requirements to me, and then I'm translating those requirements for my engineering team. I started to just kind of step one by one into a product management role where I'm just understanding a little bit of business. But when I showed interest in terms of how can I grow myself into this career, I want to look at the broader aspect of responsibilities. I want to look at broader line of products. That's where one of my seniors suggested to look for MBA as an option.
Right.
Though the degree will not really translate into product management as a role because you have diverse set of things you can pursue after that degree, but it will expand your knowledge about business. It will expand your knowledge about a strategy,
Right.
right? You'll come to understand so many use cases. You'll learn so much about business, right? And that helps you to understand the role better, right? So that's where I pursued my MBA and got my full-time transition into product management at Dell. That's a very different aspect altogether, right? So when I was dealing with product management at Dell, it was more about how we can really create a solution for an ISM. So I was working closely with a solution that was ISV with SAP,
Right.
right? So I was actually working on a junction of two big enterprises, you can say. One was Dell, one was SAP. I'm trying to understand two solutions and then producing value added softwares for the customer. So
Got it.
that was very challenging in initial front because I was coming from a very different domain,
Hmm.
right? So not understanding knowledge of two enterprises altogether and then understanding how you can deliver efficient solution for your user was challenging, but at the same time very learning, right? I
Right.
understood the value of how you can really thrill in a B2B setup. So that was my first introduction to a very B2B environment. And I think I understood how very limited number of customers can really give you such a large scale of revenue. So I was very close to sales, pre-sales, tech sales kind of roles at that point in time, though engineering was involved. But my major focus was how we can really drive revenue, how we can make sure that our every SKU sells out in the market very well.
Right.
Right. Then I transitioned to VMware. I got transitioned to a senior product manager at Dell itself, but then my journey of senior product management continued till VMware and in Salesforce as well. The primary change that I have seen from product manager to senior product management is the scale of responsibilities that you are managing,
Right.
right? You started to overlook a broader set of product. You start to align yourself more towards business strategy. While I've seen at a entry level PM role, you are more working towards execution, right? Though it is important, very much important, right? But the kind of responsibilities you are taking, the kind of alignment towards business you are looking, that's also very crucial when you grow into your career ladder, right?
So, Monica, tell me one thing. Like, what exactly about product management fascinated you back then, if you can recall, when you wanted to transition into this role? What was the thing, or what do you think is a differentiating factor when you are working as a product manager? And vis-a-vis, if you had been in the same role as in a more technical setup, let's say, what do you think is the differentiator? I know the answer somewhat, but I want to hear it from you.
Course. So I think I can also tell you exactly the point when I realized that this is the role I want to be in. It was in a customer call. So when I was working as an engineer, I know what code I have to write, what functionalities that I have to deliver. I was kind of working in that domain. I happened to join a customer call with my product managers and I think my engineering manager at that point in time. And customer was asking certain things, and he was like, "I have this complex flow. How will we be able to solve it?" And since I was working as an engineer on that product, so I knew that product in and out. I don't know the use cases, but I knew the product. So I told them a solution that could have helped them. And there was a small part of it which we need to build in order to achieve that. That expression in that customer's eyes, right? The wow, that yes, if we can do it. That actually, that's the moment I realized that I'm doing my work, but I don't know where my work is connecting to a customer,
Right.
right? And right at that moment, I realized that I want to be in a space where I want to see that expression in customer's eyes over and over again, right? And I realized that I want to move a little away from just tech part of it. I want to involve business and understand how my work is delivering value to the customers.
Right. Coming to traits or idiosyncrasies at product manager level, what do you see is something which is maybe important, or what do you think you possess which product managers should have or you strive to have in daily, or what's your goal to have so for success in as a product manager?
Right. So I think, and I know it's a recorded call and I'm making an official comment, product manager is a very soft skill based job, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know if Python is really my key competence or Tableau is my really key competence. I know that my key competence is to produce good slides, right? My key
Yeah, that is
competence
true. That is absolutely true.
is a Word document where I can communicate what I want to communicate, right? So
Articulation.
I
Yeah.
yeah, so I feel very strongly that it's a very soft skill driven role. Pointing out that you want to learn tech, I would not really suggest that. To become a good product manager, there are certain keys that you will hear from everywhere that you have to be good at communication, you have to be good at stakeholder management, problem solving skill, blah, 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 so many of them. The two things that really worked for me. One is very clear thinking. You as a product manager, as I initially mentioned, right, you are the orchestrator of the entire music piece that is going to be developed out of it. So
Mm.
you really need to know what needs to be developed. If you are confused, your product cannot be good, your product could not be successful. So you have to have that very clear thinking in terms of what needs to be developed and why we are developing it. If you're clear on these two things, you'll be able to communicate it to your engineering team, your designer team, and then you'll be able to get right results, right? So one is clarity of thinking, and second, which is like a subset of it, able to convey the same information to your engineering team, right? So I have seen people who struggle to communicate what they're thinking out, right? That's very important. Whatever you are thinking, you should have the capability to articulate that to
Yeah.
your teams, right? So that's very important. Actually, I roughly remember. So I was doing an interview for one of the top IMs for my VMware experience, and there was a candidate, right? And she was not really very good in language,
Right.
but she was so good in clarity of thinking. She knows what she's saying, irrespective of the language that she is saying, English or Hindi. Her points were so pinpoint, right? That
Mm.
the panel we met after her interview, four of us have interviewed her, right? Everyone pointed that she has such an amazing clarity of thinking,
Right.
right? So irrespective of the fact that in what language you are communicating, your ultimate goal is what you are thinking should be communicated to the other side, right? So that's very important. And other is innovative mindset. So as a product manager, you need to bring that mindset into your team of innovation, right? You should let them think out of the box. You should promote that kind of culture. That's when your products will be amazing, right? We remember that very cliche saying by Ford, that when they asked what people are really looking for, they were looking for faster horses,
Yeah.
right? Which delivered as a car, right? So we want to deliver sophisticated cars, right? While we can continue to get faster horses request. So let your team think out of the box so that you can actually bring out value from the product that you're delivering. So these are very important traits which I feel a product manager should thrive for. Right. One thing that really always pestered me is my habit of saying yes. So I'm still struggling and learning to say no. Right. That always costs me a little because I end up saying yes, yes, I'll write this PRD, yes, I'll write this, I'll create this, I'll create this. So I end up kind of creating more and more work for me. But for a product manager, they need to say no. Need to know to say no, right?
Yeah.
So they should know where to say a firm no and where they can still go with yes. So that's a learning that I'm doing, and I'm sure every product manager should do in their tenure.
Yeah, that is interesting. About clarity of thought, I think a lot of CEOs, when we see global CEOs, you watch their candidate interviews, they're very clear about what they want. I think that is really great. I also want to have that. Coming to our next topic, which revolves around preparing about this role. Monica, you have been in this industry. You have seen a lot of students and you have interviewed a lot of people who want to get into this place. So how does one go about let's break it down to three sub points. First is, how does one transition to a PM role? I know there are one option is MBA, maybe one is working with the product team. You can elaborate on that. How can someone transition? And second is, how does one go about preparing for it? And third is, based on current market scenario, what are the options?
So to start with, you're starting how to transition, right? So transition is actually a very organic thing, right? Either you are in a job where you uh, thrive for this role and you want to transition, or you are coming fresh out of your college, right? So transitioning options are very organic, like where you are, how you explored about this role and you want to transition. Right. In terms of preparation, I think preparation changes based on what kind of transition you're looking for. So if you are a product manager who is just entering into the industry, right, your preparation will be little different, right? Versus a person who is actually looking of a lateral transition from maybe PM to senior PM or PM into a different organization, your preparation would be little different. So when you are starting your beginner kind of experience, you need to know about what a product is, right? How a product design happens, right? You need to know all the kind of product preparation questions like product design, product insights, how to improve a product, what is your favorite application. So you need to understand when a product is being designed, who are we designing it for, what is the problem that we are solving, how we are solving it, with this problem that we are solving, what kind of impact it can create on the market, and how we are going to measure it. So be it your circles framework, be it your 4Ws and 1H kind of framework, you need to understand that criticality of your product. So my suggestion is, look at your day-to-day apps, the apps that you are using, right? Look at your Google Maps, look at your WhatsApp, look at some of the new amazing stuff coming out in the market, look at your dating apps, right? They're such addictive apps, right? Try to understand what market they have been created for. Try
Mm.
to understand the plan, try to understand the persona who is going to use it, try to understand how they are making money, how you
Right.
can improve them, right? And if you are a product manager, what changes would you recommend to this app, or what improvements that you're going to do to this app so that it can do even better,
Mm.
right? So always keep your critical hat on when you're preparing for interviews, and make sure every app you try to analyze it in that angle.
Mm.
That in itself is a good preparation for you,
Right.
right? Even in this kind of interviews, there are slight variation that happens based on what company you are preparing for, right? So if you're preparing for there could be slight deviation, right? So will ask you questions around product design, product insight, ask you questions around maybe design a sketch pen or design an elevator, right? So they're very typical questions of algorithms and understanding that what kind of a scale you can think of. Those kind of questions you need to practice as well.
Right.
Some of the new entrant questions that I have seen in the market around RCA, where you have to do root cause evaluation. So supposedly you are having a software development happening, and you realize for that software adoption is not working as expected. So as a product manager, how will you evaluate that situation? What kind of insights that you want to make out of it, right? So that kind of RCA questions are also pretty common these days in the market, right? In terms of senior person who is having a lateral transition, I think a lot of questions are also based on your experiences,
Mm.
right? So you want to know as a product manager where you have failed, where you have really had a good success, what are the products that you have created from scratch, right? So that kind of questions also come. So as a product manager who is literally transitioning into the role, I would suggest go deep into your background. Try to bring stories, right? And try to bring more end-to-end stories, like why you have started building that feature, what you have built, how you have built, how
Mm.
it really did add value to your business,
Right.
right? So create those kind of stories. The idea is that they want to understand your leadership style. They wanted to understand how you work in difficult situations, how you manage a mess, right? If you have to bring innovation, how will you do that? Are you an execution centric person,
Mm.
right? So they want to understand the core qualities that a PM needs to have based on your experience. So
Right.
that is actually the uber level of things that you can say PM interviews would ask for, right? So if you are a fresher, you don't have any previous experience, they will evaluate your problem solving skills based on some of the existing apps that you might have used. If you're already an existing PM, they want to go deep into your background and see how you have done certain things, right? So that kind of experiences they'll ask for. Now coming to your second question, that in market, what kind of roles are open? I think roles are open at every level. So I have seen a lot of APMs are also happening. So it's like fresh out of management colleges, they are hiring APMs, and those get converted into full-time PMs after.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of APM opportunities you will find. PMs are there, senior PM, principal PM, possibly whatnot in the hierarchy, right? And considering how amazing Indian PMs are performing, I have seen global organizations have also started to give more like senior PM hits within India itself, which I think was not so common 10 years back, right? So, but now we have seen PM as a community growing more and more in India. That's amazing.
Yeah, I've also I interacted with a few people. Microsoft Word is based completely out of India, so the development, product management, everything is in Hyderabad only. Coming to some product profiling methods, let's say you have a set of products which needs to be profiled. How do we measure success? I know for every product, based on their product life cycle, maybe the methods in which we profile might differ, but you can say. How do we profile, how do we decide which product is successful and which is not?
Makes sense. So profile, you want to understand like what are the KPIs that we.
Yeah, product profiling. How like let's say there are three products, and we need to see where to put more resources, let's say, or
Mhm.
we need to determine which one to focus more onto, or which might have more potential? How are we going to profile it standing today?
So you are saying now I'm wearing hat of a CEO and I have three products in
Yes.
line and to kind of put my resources into 3x and where I want to put more. I think it's a very easy answer, right? So I'll put my resources where I see is a potentially most biggest TAM,
Right.
right? So TAM is total addressable market. So where I see is the biggest TAM and
Right.
we have biggest potential to reach there, right? So that would be my place where I want to put my eggs, right? Now, based on various criterias, right? So when I say my product is going to be successful, right, that depends on various other criterias, like if I have really happy users, right? So if my product is being used by someone, right, and they can really use my product well, that's a happy user for me. Like my grandmom, if she can start to send me a meme, that's amazing, right? So I will say that she has actually learned a smartphone as a tech, right? So now when I am creating a product, if it's a smartphone, what TAM I am targeting to, and if TAM has a potential for me to reach,
Right.
right? That's a place I want to invest more, right? I would also evaluate in terms of competition. So if I am looking at a TAM, I would also want to know what are the competition which are already existent in that,
Hmm.
right? Can I create a technology which is sophisticated enough to compete against them?
Right.
So now taking examples of iPhones, right? So I was one user who was like for a very long time, I was an Android user. And
Hmm.
it's just matter of time that you started with your iPhone, then you have iPad, then you have MacBook, and now you just can't go back, right? So it's a kind of sophisticated technology that they have created. They are charging so much of premium. When you were back then at Android user, you'll just crib about the prices all the time, but now you're just okay to pay everything and get into the technology ecosystem, right? So if I am creating a software, how my competition are doing, right? Will I be able to thrive in that competition?
Right.
Would it really make sense for me to create a new smartphone? So there are multiple ways for me, right? What kind of users will be there? If
Right.
I can identify a decent revenue growth in that sector, right? Do I have a right market fit? Right.
Hmm.
So if I'm creating a product, will it be able to reach that niche? Right. So if you remember back in day when we were doing in our office setup, we have those Cisco phones, and every time we are just calling everyone for
Yes.
chatting. We have like G chat and stuff where we are just chatting. And now that entire ecosystem has been replaced by Slack, right? You have just such sophisticated way of managing your conversation, creating multiple people in the conversation, creating channels and possibly whatnot. Actually, in my own organization, we have completely replaced even Gmail with Slack. Right. So our most important communication is happening over Slack. Mails are just for meeting invites. Right. So that's how, if I'm entering into that market, I need to know my competition and I need to know my market fit. So
Right.
at that point in time, Slack identified that their market fit is the place where they want to create a sophisticated conversation platform. They
Right.
must have known their competition at that point in time, that it's going to be Gmeet, it's going to be,
Hmm.
I don't even recall previous teams and all, right?
Right.
So those are going to be my competition, and I have my uh,
Yeah. Right.
market fit, right? So that's how I will evaluate market positioning. You can do all a number of analysis, SWOT analysis, and possibly whatnot, but that would be the right way to evaluate here.
So, Monica, coming to the products you have worked with, like you must have worked with a lot of products. So, coming to how each of the products, how they serve the market, and if you can talk a little about that, and also if you can approach wise how it was different in different organizations, if you can throw some light on that.
Absolutely. So as I initially also mentioned, right? So I am actually blessed in the sense that I get a chance to work in diverse set of projects. At Adobe, I was working more into a B2C domain where my software is used by individual freelancers who are working in design industry to create magazines and all, right? So I was creating solution which is being deployed into their store, and every individual user is consuming that software and then reviewing the software, all the issues we are directly interacting with customers. We are not having lot of like enterprise centric one-on-one customer call, but more looking at data to understand where the bugs are, what kind of features they are addressing. So your day in day out understanding of how your feature was working is based on data. If they've clicked on this button, if they have clicked on this, are they using it, not using it? You're looking at your CSAT scores, you're looking at your NPS scores very strongly, because every NPS score is going to add a new customer, right? So that was more like a B2C domain. When I moved to Dell, it was very B2B, and even interaction with technical team was also limited, right? So it was B2B to the extent that it is more centric to your sales, pre-sales kind of role, right? So you are creating a lot of solution docs, technical docs. You are also working on a particular software, but the value that you are bringing was more from the sales or pre-sales point of view than this. So it was a huge change and entirely different set of learning that I have there, right? So you're trying to understand very closely that how market deals, right? You are trying to understand where the competition is, what kind of solution we can create in order to compete in that market, right? You're trying to understand the landscape of a very big enterprise and then trying to identify gaps and creating solution for those gaps,
Right.
right? So it was a very different set of learning that we have, right? Then and VMware, I was actually in more B2B2C. So my software is being sold to enterprise,
Yeah.
right? But it is being used by the users of those enterprise, just like our normal day-to-day software, like your Outlooks and Google Workspace, right? So they actually sell that software to an enterprise, and eventually the users of those enterprise use those solution, right? So I was in that space, so I was looking at user experience. At the same time, I was also very much willing to understand that what is that enterprise needs, because eventually enterprise is paying for that software, right? So even though they want more delightful experience for their employees, but
Right.
they are also looking for certain security settings, privacy settings, what kind of controls that they can put to their system. They are very much interested in knowing what kind of admin controls we can provide, what kind of security settings they can provide, how they can look at certain dashboards at the enterprise level, which can help them to understand their organization. And I think similar work here at Salesforce as well. So here as well, I'm looking at more enterprise centric products where we are delivering solutions to an enterprise. Enterprise are further implementing those solutions. So we are providing a lot of controls at the enterprise level where they can manage their solution, lot of flexibility configuration for them, so that they can also manage their enterprise as well, right? How role changes in various organizations. So when you are at disposal of B2C, lot of your data, lot of your decisions are based on data driven, right? So every feature, I don't have an enterprise to tell me that deliver this feature for me, which very often happens in enterprise center. So in enterprise, when I was working with a previous organization, my software had like 6 7 customers, but it was getting a huge chunk of revenue from that software itself, right? And those 5 people can sometimes also dictate that these are the features that we want. But when you are in B2C, when a million users or even more than a million users are using your application, you have to deep dive into your data to understand what are the gaps, what can I build more to delight my customers so that my subscriptions can sell more, right? So that level of detailing you need to go in B2C. You need to understand everything from customer pattern. You'll roll out a lot of survey. The way you do customer research changes a lot, right? When you are in more enterprise setup, you are also at leverage of lot of stakeholders involved, right? So in my current organization, we have a stakeholder called research, right? So they are dedicatedly working on research, producing lot of insights for product team to consume, right? You have designers who are working on creating the UX, right? You also have platform who is building central capabilities, and then those platform capabilities can be leveraged to create more industry specific solutions, right? So that's how the setup changes in various organizations. Your stakeholders, your processes also change, right? So how you are working with engineering team, what kind of approvals you need, right? So every organization come with their own processes, their own systems to deal with, right?
Right. Uh, Monica, tell us something about how you go about prioritizing things. I mean, let's say there are 10 things on your table, and how do you prioritize based on like
Yeah.
what?
And prioritization is actually a very important aspect of a product manager's role. right? And it also decides on what kind of value your customer is going to get out of your product, right? But prioritization changes a lot based on where the software is in your SDLC journey. So if it is a software that is going to go just out in the market, like it's going to go pilot, the first version is going to go release, then the kind of work that you need to put in, the kind of prioritization that you need to put in will be very different then if you are having a mature product and you are just looking at features, right? So I think very interesting framework that I follow when I'm working on a very new product altogether is a Kano framework, right? Where I'm trying to understand based on market research, based on competition in the market, that what are the basic features that I need to have in the product,
Right.
right? So if I'm saying that I have to create certain solution, at least this bare minimum is needed for this software to be functional,
Mm.
right? Then what are the additional things that I need so that my my product will be at par with competition, which is performer category.
Right.
And then we have delighters category, the features that allow you to become very excited about the product.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So right now we know that everyone is putting Gen AI in that category, and they
Yeah.
create a big feature, then
It
they
is
put
very
some
hype.
sort
Yeah.
of, yeah, and then they put certain Gen AI features and say this is the delighter for everyone, and it truly does sometimes. Right. Sometimes it is also an overkill, and I think we are product managers better judge of it. But yes, we need to have certain features of each category. Your product could not work without basic. You need to have basic. You can evaluate a little bit between performers, that what you call as performer, and
Right.
always look for certain delighters that will help you to get more user attention faster,
Right.
right? So that's the Kano framework for you when you're working on a software very new, right? My go-to framework when I look for prioritization in an existing product for feature level stuff is a RISE framework,
Mm.
right? I actually got introduced to RISE framework few years ago, but unconsciously you're using that framework a lot because you're trying to understand that how important my feature is, what
Yeah.
is the reach and impact of my feature, and how much effort it is going to take. So
Yeah.
if I have a feature who is going to be similar on reach and impact, based on effort, I'll say this is low hanging fruit, do it fast.
Mm.
Right. So it's a very obvious framework. They just put names to it, right? Even before knowing the name, you are just doing the same thing, right? But I think that's the right way to do it as well, right? So if you know the impact and reach of your feature, try to see where you are going to create more impact, create more reach, and also evaluate in terms of effort.
That's a lot of conversations and a lot of experience we talked about, and I think I've reached the end of my questions. So finally, I would want you to give some of your 2 cents to anyone who is watching this, maybe aspirants, maybe someone who is looking for a transition.
So, talking about aspirants who are watching this video, I think my only bit is make sure you know this role before you're entering it, right? I'm not saying that there is no turnaround that you can do. You can, of course, go back and change your dimensions, but this is a role which requires a lot of energy because you are in the driving seat and you have to be the one who gets up in the morning and say, "Today I'm going to drive this." So you need a lot of self motivation. So make sure you understand the role properly. Always, if you are in a position where you can shadow a PM, existing PM, I would suggest you go ahead, do it, right? Spend a week with them, try to understand what they're doing, right? And trust me, even a week would not be sufficient because PM role changes every day in a quarter, right? Every day closer to release it's going to be different, away from release it's going to be different. So make sure you understand that cycle and you are ready to take on that challenge, right? For existing PMs, I'm sure that you know most of it, right? Always stay curious. Don't be reluctant on learning new technology.
Yeah.
Always learn about new stuff that is happening in the market. Nobody really asks you to learn the technology from the tech stack level. They want to know that how functional capabilities run for the tech stack. Things are changing a lot in technology. For us to remain updated and be able to stay passionate about this role will be only one thing: learn the domain, learn the tech that you're going to work for.
Right.
So those going to be my concluding statements for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Monica, for your time, and this has been a great interview and learning for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for giving me this opportunity.